You're listening to Soundrise Podcast, a show hosted by Aleks in Serbia and Vlada in Poland.
Each week we cover a different artist or band and engage in open spontaneous debates and discussions about specific parts of their discographies. Our goal is to expand their musical horizons and cover a great range of genres and styles.
Find us on Patreon, patreon.com/soundrisepod, and on social media @soundrisepod.
Hello everyone, welcome to another episode of Soundrise Podcast. Today I think we're doing a very special episode because today we're going to talk about the bands from our part of the world, from former Yugoslavia and Serbia. So Aleks, are you excited about this episode?
I'm super excited, to be honest. I think this is a unique episode and a unique chance to kind of explore some of the finest pop and rock and also punk records from the former Yugoslavia. So I'm really excited, Vlada, and looking forward to chatting about three absolutely legendary records, Vlada.
Yes, and we decided to give you a certain overview of Yugoslav rock. Of course, it's very difficult to cram the rich history of Yugoslav rock into just 3 records. But we decided to focus on our favorites. My favorites, that is. I was the one who chose these records for this episode.
Yeah, I'm new to this because I belong to the generation that listens to turbo folk, unfortunately.
Exactly, and if you want to know what turbo folk is, maybe it's smarter not to Google it, okay? But nevertheless, we're going to talk about 2 bands that were founded back in the 70s. U-Grupa, who are still active and have recently celebrated 50 years of work. So many people call them the Serbian or the Yugoslav Rolling Stones for that reason. And we're going to talk about their debut record. Another group of their peers that we're going to talk about, a group that I'm particularly excited about, is called Pop Machina. And this is a band that I think might blow you out of the water. But we'll get to that. So these 2 groups, I think, are probably among the most important 70s groups in former Yugoslavia, alongside acts such as Time and Korni Grupa, who unfortunately we couldn't include. Maybe we'll have another episode where we will talk about these respective bands. And we are going to talk about a new wave act that was formed in 1980 and released only 1.5 records, sort of. This band is called Charlo Akrobata. Charlo Akrobata was, by the way, a name that was used for Charlie Chaplin back when those films were new. And in Yugoslavia, they called him Charlo Akrobata instead of Charlie Chaplin. So that's an interesting piece of trivia. So, where to begin? Let's talk about U-Grupa first, because I think their record here is the oldest, if I'm not mistaken, from 1973. And also the name U-Grupa, Yugoslav band, the ultimate Yugoslav band. As I said, these guys were formed in 1970s. However, they were active even back in the 60s. They were in a very well-known band called Gentlemany that primarily covered 60s British invasion stuff, but also had some stuff of their own. So out of this group, U-Grupa came to the scene, founded by 2 brothers, Jelic, Dragi and Žika Jelic. And they decided at one point to try to do their own stuff, to write their own originals, sing in Serbo-Croatian language, which was known by that name at the time. Nowadays, this language has 4 different names, but let's not get into that. So we're talking about their debut record. So I want to ask Alexander first. Alexander, what did you think about this record?
I think this is something that every rock fan from the Balkans should talk about. Whenever, a foreigner asks you, hey, what's the kind of rock that you guys listen to? Can you recommend a rock album from the Balkans? Yes, I can. And that should be your answer, and you should point out this album. This album is great in many ways. First of all, I think I have to mention, even though I don't think that's the main strength of this album, but one of their biggest hits, Trudna Šuma, is featured on this album. And nowadays, these guys, after 50 plus years of playing, they still play this song, and it's very, very popular. But the rest of the album is really, really good. I have to praise the guitar work here, but also the rest of the band just cooks. It absolutely cooks, and it can definitely remind you of um, some of the world's biggest rock bands. So these guys know what they were doing. They were really good at soloing, really good at creating the atmosphere. A great psychedelic touch here. So the sound is kind of diverse, which is never a bad thing in my opinion. But it's let's say that it's centered around psychedelic rock, hard rock, and maybe a bit of progressive rock. So a great fusion. I think an important record for every fan of rock music. And as you guys know, we have had some guests on our show before, and one of our guests, Chris Ekman, is really into collecting records from all over the world. He really likes, exploring different music. So if we have some true music geeks listening to this episode right now, and if you guys want to kind of be alternative and explore bands from, let's say, unknown places, I think this is definitely a record that you should pick up. So, Vlada, what were your thoughts? I know that this is not your first time of listening, but let me hear your impressions.
All right, so I have to say one thing that given the longevity of U Grupa, a lot of people kind of dismiss them because they change their sound over time, and a lot of it sounds a bit, let's say, kind of slick and polished. So people are quite surprised when they actually hear this debut record, which I feel is completely different. And what I especially admire about this is how raw it sounds. So this is a power trio on this first record, and it sounds so powerful, and yet it seems like they do not heavily rely on any special effects or any gimmicks. It's all very raw, very visceral, especially the first couple of tracks, Trka and Noć je moja. In translation, it would be The Race and The Night is Mine. Those two tracks, I think, are probably my highlights, even though there are other very well-known tracks later on the record. But Trka opens up with a very interesting guitar riff. Kind of sounds almost futuristic and very... Dragi Jelic as a guitar player has a very gentle touch. And that's what I really love about this. Like, he can rock out, but he also has this sort of sensibility where he plays these beautiful melodic lines. And this is exactly how the record opens. And it sounds a bit of futuristic, and it has that sort of sound that I feel can only be identified with their country of origin, that is Serbia and Yugoslavia. It has something unique to it, right? Would you say that too, Alex?
Yes, it has that touch of authenticity, but it's still pretty reminiscent of that time, of the rock music of that time, right, Mara?
Yes, exactly. And the guitar workout on that track really blows me away. And then it segues into the second track, which I feel is, in my opinion, an absolute highlight when it comes to Yugoslav rock music. This is, I don't know, this is just on another level. The Night is Mine, Noć je moja. The song is kind of like Black Sabbath, but it still has a certain sound of its own. You know, you get that Sabbath vibe all over the place, but then I feel like if this was actually recorded by Black Sabbath, it would have been one of their greatest songs, for sure. And I hope that I don't sound like I'm exaggerating, but I just haven't heard a lot of rock songs, a lot of hard rock songs with that kind of intensity. And what I love about it, it has this very intricate opening riff, and then throughout the song, um, Jelic plays variations on this riff, and there's a lot of jamming. And it just blows me away. It just keeps getting more and more intense as you go along. What did you think about this pearl of a song?
I don't think that you're exaggerating anything here. I think this is a marvel, a monster track. You know, guys, if you're into Black Sabbath, you should listen to this track and this album, of course. But this particular track, I think, will at least remind you of Black Sabbath. But Vlada, I focused on another thing when it comes to this song. Do you remember that thunderous bass solo?
Oh yeah, I mean, somewhere in the middle, the band just slows things down, and then you get to hear this really awesome bass solo. It sounds so live, and that's what I really love about 70s and 60s bands, that they were willing to jam on the record, and you can really feel their energy. You can almost imagine yourself being at their gig, and I don't know. This just leaves me speechless. And what I find really odd, in my opinion, this is their best song. But what I find really odd is that they never play it anymore. I couldn't find any recordings of this song, any videos, anything following this debut record. So that's a crying shame. So if anyone who knows U Grupa is listening to this, or if the guys themselves are listening to this, please let them know that they should include this song, especially now when it's their 50th anniversary. Once this whole COVID thing ends, I hope that they will have their 50th anniversary concert, and I honestly hope that they will dig out this excellent tune. And I don't know, if you're a Sabbath fan or a hard rock fan in general, you owe yourself to give this one a listen. We will, of course, link these songs on our Facebook page, and you will be able to watch or listen to respective YouTube or Spotify recordings. So,
Yeah.
Alex, what else can I add? I don't want to be too hung up on a single song. The rest of
I want to ask you about the hit Trudna Shuma. What do you think of that song?
Okay, so this is a bit weird because that's one of those songs that's kind of overplayed in Serbia. So I kind of started approaching it from a different perspective while listening to this record, because I didn't really care much about it in the past before I was well acquainted with U Grupa's output, but now I really appreciate it. I think it's an excellent song, and what I like about it is the text, which shows a certain childlike innocence that the band had at that time, and I think that's also one of their great assets, that kind of quirky, almost childlike nature of certain songs. And you find that in some other songs as well. Čovek I Marsovac, for example, The Man and the Martian. And I love the energy. Of course, it's a typical rock and roll song, but it has a very interesting melody to that. So it's not, it doesn't sound in any way generic. So yeah, I think it's also a great song, but perhaps not on the level as Noche Moja. And I don't know, the rest of the record is great as well, but they kind of take things down a notch near the end. It's mostly ballads. And speaking of ballads, there's a ballad here that's also considered a classic of Yugoslav rock, The Black Butterfly, or Crni Leptir. So, Alexander, what about this one?
I don't exactly remember that particular song. That's one of the songs that are kind of vague in my mind. Can you kind of remind me?
That's so overplayed. Like, everybody knows this song. What are you talking about?
When it comes to overplayed songs, I think Trudna Shuma is the absolute winner here. Crni Leptir, I probably remember it, but at this point, just parts of it. I don't know.
Well, it's a relatively simple and straightforward ballad, but it has that kind of poignancy that really appeals to people, especially the story where it's about black butterflies flying to the lamppost, attracted by the light, and then getting burned. A nice symbolism there. So a really great song, somewhat overplayed in the Balkans, but if you approach it with fresh ears and if you've never heard this band, of course, this might appeal to you a lot, and I think you might really enjoy the atmosphere of the song. Now, of course, our dear listeners may not be Serbo-Croatian speakers, so I think that they can still enjoy this record regardless of the fact that they may not be able to follow the lyrics, because there's so many cool riffs here, so many great guitar licks, so much energy. So what do you think about that? Is this something that people who don't understand Serbian can properly enjoy?
100% agree, and even if you make an effort to translate the lyrics, I don't think that you would be disappointed. So definitely worth listening, and the music here is it's top notch. It's really relevant in the rock world, and maybe the language does it a disservice, but not all people on the world can speak English and make good music in English. But that doesn't matter, right, Vlada?
It's really great that these bands sang in Serbo-Croatian, because there were a couple of attempts by certain Yugoslav bands back in the 70s to record albums in English, and they didn't really work out well, mainly because the singers had trouble singing in English at that time, and it just sounds awkward overall. So this is, I feel, much more authentic, and no reason why you should skip it just because of the language barrier. So highly recommend it. We can't praise this album enough. I think it's not a perfect record, far from it. It shows that it's a debut record, but these guys had amazing chops. I mean, they still do. And we are so happy that we can talk about them, and knowing that they're still active and that they have just released a box set including all their records on the CD. So maybe look out for that if you're into collecting CDs or records. That might be an awesome pickup for you. Okay, so Alex, shall we continue to the ratings?
Yes, Vlada, but first, before we go to our ratings, guys, please take a moment to listen to our sponsored advertisement.
Brown Dog Promos is a champ in the promotional products industry, having shipped all over the world since 1989. For over 30 years, Brown Dog Promos has supplied custom printed promotional items like mugs, pens, calendars, embroidered or screen printed clothing, and anything else you could possibly need to companies and groups of all sizes. They also pride themselves on working with nonprofits to raise funds and recognize key donors and volunteers. For commercial clients, Brown Dog Promos offers invaluable advertising and marketing guidance based on their 3 decades in the business. Whether you're looking to promote your company, nonprofit organization, or any variety of branding and marketing, Brown Dog Promos can make it happen.
For all of your custom printed sportswear, decals, labels, and corporate gifts, be sure to check out Brown Dog Promos by following them on Instagram under their handle Brown Dog Promos, liking their page at facebook.com/browndogpromos, or visiting their website browndogpromos.com. Trust the top dogs, Tony and Matthew, to help you make your branding outstanding. Okay, Vlada, so back to the ratings. So what are you saying?
So, I think I'll give this one an 8. I think it could have been higher if they had continued the same style as Noche Moja. I feel like that's a missed opportunity there that... I don't know, maybe they didn't really have any other songs like that. Maybe they wanted to go in a different direction. Nevertheless, it's still a very good record, if not excellent, especially considering it has all these legendary tracks. So definitely an 8 from me, even though if I looked at some individual songs like Noche Moja or Trka, I would give those songs 9.5. These are, I think, amazing tracks. And I feel if they had been recorded by an American or an English group at that time, they would have been much more well known. So yeah, that's my final verdict for this. And of course, my highlight is Noche Moja, The Night Is Mine. What about you, Aleks? What do you say?
The same highlight song, Vlada, and my rating is somewhere between 8 and 8.5. And the reason why I would give it more than 8 is because I was amazed by some of the songs here. Like Devojko Mala, Podigni Glavu, and Noche Moja, obviously. So, okay, I'll give it 8.5. I won't really, I don't know, I won't regret this. I think this is a very, very good record. So, guys, do not hesitate to pick this up and just enjoy it.
All right, so yeah, maybe 8.5 is maybe I shouldn't be so stingy. I'll correct my rating to 8.5 as well now that I think about it, because I'm pretty sure we gave 8 to inferior records than this. Okay, is that fair?
Totally
Is that allowed, Alexander? Can I fix my rating?
Yes, just like you did with The Cure last time.
Is this highly irregular? I wonder. I don't know. Listeners, please let us know. Are our ratings all messed up? Is our scale in any way realistic? Please let us know.
Okay, I know that some of our episodes have some ridiculous ratings, and
No,
honestly,
I don't think that way. I think they're fine.
You know, man, Mumford & Sons, Gnarls Barkley, Chic. Let's not continue the list.
I only regret giving 6 to one of Mumford & Sons records. That's all. Because that's too high for them. That's my only regret. I don't know about you.
It doesn't matter anyway. Yeah, so let's move on to the next record. Vlada, I think you made a great intro for this record. You kind of excited us with the intro. So can you share a bit more info and also your impressions about this next album?
So yeah, this band, they were peers of U Group, but they even shared the drummer at one point. The drummer that you listened to on the first record by U Group is the same drummer that originally played for Pop Machina. But this record also came out in 1973 or 1974. Let me check. Yeah, I think it's 1973. And I feel that this is kind of a step forward compared to U Grupa in a way. And not by a large margin, because U Grupa is excellent. But this to me sounds so original and so unconventional for what was expected of rock bands in Yugoslavia at the time. It's so controversial even in the sense of what was valued in that kind of society. That's my impression. Of course, I may be completely wrong. Maybe some older folks can throw some lights on that. But this is a real tour de force, a record that just hits you very hard and doesn't let up from the get-go. And it's called Kiselina, which means acid. So as you may already guess, the record is about an acid trip, which was a very controversial topic at that time. So the band originally could not release the record with its intended sequence of songs because they were too scared that somebody might be onto them, that somebody might figure it out. And mind you, all these record companies at the time were state-owned because this was a socialist country. So all the record companies were state-owned, and they had this fear. And they kind of self-censored themselves. So they did not release the record with the right order of songs. And the original cover was replaced by a more conventional photo of the three band members. However, the version that Aleks and I listened to is a reconstructed version. So eventually, one of the band's members, Robert Nemeček, decided to restore the album to its full glory. And that happened, I think, around 15 or 10 years ago. And now we have the chance to listen to this record as it was originally intended, with the right sequence of the songs and with the original cover art, which looks very trippy. So, Alexander, what do you think about the overall psychedelic feel of this record? Is it clear that it's about a drug trip?
Yes, I loved it. I loved it. I absolutely loved it. The musicianship was wicked. The atmosphere was trippy and really enjoyable and energetic. And the whole album just needs to be listened from start to finish because I think every track here deserves a listen. And um, did you spot the 2000 issue of the album cover on Wikipedia, Vlada?
No, I'm afraid not. What are you exactly
You
talking
should
about?
you should take a look, on the album's Wikipedia page, English Wikipedia. You can see you can see a reissue of the album artwork, and it's a train that is constructed of music instruments, Vlada.
But mind you, that's not the original intended artwork. The one that,
I know.
yeah, the one that is supposed to be there is the one where they're in all these psychedelic colors and it says Kiselina underneath. That's the original one that they were too afraid to release at the time. So, but
That's
yeah, I saw the
that one's
train
cool,
one too.
definitely.
Yeah. So
Yeah, the train one is really it's smart and it's really fun. Wouldn't you agree?
yes, for sure. And but let's get down to the songs. So Alexander, what are your highlights here?
Oh, so many songs. I honestly think, as I said, every song is a highlight here. But if I had to choose some highlights, I think first of all, Pesma Srećne noći. I think that's a really good song. Also, Povratak zvezdama was a really good atmospheric track. And yeah, those are my two highlights, but the rest of the songs are equally good, I would say.
Yes, and I love how there's a seamless whole. The record starts with a song called "I'm Searching for the Way" or "I'm Searching for the Path," Tražim put, and this song is, as I understood from certain readings that I did, is about a guy trying to score an LSD trip and being scared that he might get a fake drug or a drug that's not potent enough. So it starts from there, and then it segues further into Acid, Kiselina, the second track, which already really feels trippy. So at that point, okay, so this is him on LSD, right? And what I love about this sequence, as you go along, there are all these crazy guitar workouts, very Hendry-esque, just like Jimi Hendrix. And the drums and the bass are not your conventional drums and bass that you would expect from a typical, 70s hard rock act. It's kind of all over the place. It's almost like a controlled chaos.